Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Cultist, back again with another kaiju sculpting video, I suppose you'd call it. We're working on SPACEGODZILLA again, and he's nearing completion, so that's ideal. We've got a little bit more skin detail to clear up, but we're getting very close to the end. As an aside, these videos have not been performing especially well lately, so we are thinking of perhaps retiring them in favor of something else, you know? But we'd like to hear your thoughts on that, the viewers. It doesn't seem like they get a lot of engagement, so we kind of assume that people aren't really digging the videos. Or YouTube just isn't digging them. They are very long, which could be a, I can see why the people who do dig it do, because sometimes it's fun to watch long-form, processes in action. But we do kind of have to be a little bit, what is the word? We have to consider what does and doesn't sell to some degree. We're not overly concerned with it, otherwise we probably wouldn't, be doing tutorials. I get the impression that those are not extremely popular on YouTube, at least not for Dreams anyway, because Dreams has not really been aided by the YouTube algorithm, shall we say. People have asked me many times, they're like, Jimmy, have you ever worked with Blender? And the answer is no, I have never worked with Blender. Though they also ask me questions about other things. They're like, Jimmy, what's the future of Dreams? It's like, I don't know. I'm not sure anybody would know that. I mean, we're not mind readers around here, or soothsayers. People seem to act like I have some sort of inside connection at MM, like I know somebody or somebody, knows me. Who knows about what's going to happen? And I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, certain things you can guess at and assume, but there's limitations to how far that can go. Also, people seem to be under the impression that I have programming skills, which, outside of Dreams, not really. I have never worked in any kind of programming capacity before Dreams. I mean, I did a little LBP, but I'm not sure that counts. That's part of the reason why I really like Dreams, is because, it gave me a chance to do my stuff. Which ordinarily I wouldn't, because I don't know how to code. I mean, I know a little code now, because I've been learning, but it's a very slow process, and not at all fun. So, yeah, I think I kind of prefer Dreams as more direct approach. Now, some things in Dreams, if I seem experienced at them, it might be because I did them in a different format. Like sculpting, that could just be the fact that I worked with modeling clay a lot before I, came to Dreams. And I could see how that skill might translate a little bit. Maybe. It's not quite the same. I actually find in Dreams it's better because your big dumb fingers don't get in the way like they do in real life. Also, modeling clay takes up a lot of space, whereas things on Dreams only take up digital space. So there's naturally a few benefits to this. It does kind of seem like, oddly enough, a lot of things in my life just so happen to be very useful if you end up on Dreams. Like things that I was doing before that I didn't really know had any practical application, just so happened to be kind of, carry over, so to speak. It's strange how life works, isn't it? Oh, and someone mentioned they said I don't use the move controller. They said that was impressive. I wasn't aware of it being impressive because I just sort of I assume that perhaps, maybe the move controls better. By the way, I actually do have a move now. I didn't when I started Dreams, but I do have one. I don't use it, though. Because I've gotten so used to doing it this way that I'm kind of more comfortable with that. But it was just a matter of not having the money to afford a move. Expenses have always been a great issue in these parts. I think we're ready, maybe, to actually begin adding facial details. But yes, I didn't have a move, and I wanted to do Dreams. By the way, when I first picked up Dreams, I was really, demoralized, where I was like, well, this is really hard to pick up. I'm not sure I can ever learn this. Also, it seems quite limited. I'm not sure I can make all the things I wanted to make. So I was pretty, initially very daunted by the task, but I just sort of liked doing it so much that I overcame that little difficulty and continued to do it until I got very good at it. Reasonably good at it. I'm not good at everything, and I have certain strengths and weaknesses, of course. Everybody has their little, their little niche. The things they do the best. Like, I'm pretty good at sculpting monsters, but I'm not much good at sculpting people, in my opinion. Unless they're really cartoony people, then I think I do quite well. Dreams, though, to be fair, it is very difficult to make humans in general. Like, I don't even think this is just a me thing. I think everybody kind of has difficulty making, if you want them to move, especially. It's not so bad when they're still. I've seen people make some pretty good still life humans, you know, but if you want them to move and you want their faces to be animated and whatnot, it can be a little tricky, especially if you want it to be thermo-effective, which, when you're making big projects, like I usually do, that's an issue. Not to mention that the uncanny valley easily creeps in when you're working with, you know, things in video games. You have to be pretty good at and know what you're doing as far as avoiding certain pitfalls with that, so I don't even think that my weakness when it comes to making human beings is localized to only me. I think Dreams in general is just a difficult place to build a human, at least a realistic human. I mean, with that Ghost of Godzilla campaign, originally I intended to make every single scene in the script using puppets and everything and building all the environments, and I quickly realized that that was something that would probably take me a year or a lot longer, and the quality might be mixed, which is why a lot of the script segments were, you know, text-based instead. Which, you know, it seems to activate people's imagination. A lot of people still liked it. But you have to make certain sacrifices for the sake of practicality. I feel like the visuals would really help. Because, you know, I think people, they already have pretty good imaginations, but, yeah, I think the visuals may have helped a few scenes. I have some very specific ideas about how that, whole thing would be concocted. When I was writing the script, I sort of, you know, imagined what would I do if I was directing it as well, which isn't really practical. Usually people who write scripts aren't the director. They don't, you know, have control over the visuals and all that. Generally, I mean, they may describe things in the script which the director has to adhere to, but generally they're not allowed to just, you know, direct everything. I'm that kind of person, though. I like to do practically everything myself, except for the voice acting. Someone else can do that. Oh, and the visuals would be helpful. If I could perhaps have a team of people helping me with the cutscenes and everything, that would be pretty useful. But I really, what is the word? I really have my own particular idea about how things should look, feel, and sound. And it gets in the way sometimes. I'm willing to sacrifice it, though, in certain cases. My musical composer, although he didn't get as much work on the Ghost of Godzilla campaign as he did in things like Sammy Seal, but you know, there is like a level of, you gotta give and take, because like, maybe I'll imagine something in my head, like, oh, this needs to sound this way, and then he'll come up with something, which is really good, but it's not the way I imagine in my head. And I have to be willing to let him kind of do his own thing, you know, because that's how these projects come together. You've got to have just a little bit of willingness to allow other people's visions to be included, provided that they're good. And in the case of, you know, the fellow I get to do my compositions, ElDavisimo, pretty talented. I would say actually very talented among Dreams musicians, very hard-working too. I afforded him the, you know, the ability to kind of do what he wanted in a lot of cases. And that's sort of how I would view, you know, if I was working on a film, I wouldn't have everything my own way, of course. There would probably be other people giving advice and whatnot. I do think it takes a certain level of, what is the word? Artistic integrity, though, to tell people no occasionally, because sometimes people have bad ideas. Sometimes people will tell you to put things in there that are just rubbish, you know, just utter nonsense, and you don't want to listen to those people. And sometimes people have good ideas, but they're just not the right idea for what you're doing. Like, you know, it might work better in a different project. And that's how new things get created. People have lots of different ideas, and then, you know, those things get repurposed and reused in other contexts. I really like to think of things that way. Like, there's a lot of projects where I have ideas that end up on the cutting room floor, and it's like, oh, well, that wasn't gonna fit. There were a few things that I've cut from my games, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, this just isn't practical. We can't have this included because there's too many things as it is. And you've got to have a reasonable release schedule in mind for this sort of stuff. I can't really afford to put years into development cycle for something like Dreams. Dreams is very quick, very, you know, get it out there. I will take, you know, several months sometimes to develop something, but I like to be as quick as possible. With, you know, of course, quality has to be overseen. I will kind of slow things down if I don't think the quality is quite up to snuff. Occasionally, though, I am not always able to see the quality level, you know. Short-sightedness is a thing. So, if you ever wondered why my early creations weren't so great, well, combination of inexperience and, you know, lack of foresight probably be contributors to that. My current work is still very flawed, but it has a nice something about it. I heard people talk about this a few times. My creations have a distinct flavor, which I don't really know how to describe. I agree, though. I agree with the people who've posited that it is unique in some regard. Not wholly unique, of course, because I don't really believe in original thought. I don't think anybody has ever truly been original, you know? I think everything kind of is inspired by something else. And there's nobody who's completely 100% unique. There's always going to be a few regurgitated things here and there, which is fine. I don't really think you have to reinvent the wheel. But my stuff does have a certain flavor that people like, apparently. And I like it, so why not? And I think that's the main draw. There's a lot of passion in what I do. Or heart, or whatever you want to call it. And a distinct personality. I'm not sure what that personality is, but it's definitely there. I would say certain creations exhibit it more than others. Like, I would say Sammy Seal is probably overflowing with my personality. As opposed to something like Fetch Quest, which still has it, but has less of it, I would say. Fetch Quest didn't age too well in terms of gameplay, but still very funny in some cases, I don't know. It was a learning process, you know. I think it's good to do things like that. Sometimes you gotta shoot for something big, and you may fall short. Because it was really ambitious at the time, you know, making a big adventure like that. But you sometimes you just gotta do it. You have got to fail. You've got to kind of attempt something. And even if you fall short of what you were attempting to do, it's a learning process in every regard. And next time you'll do better. A good example, I think Brawny Barnacle Brothers, well, it's not perfect. It's kind of like Fetch Quest perfected, like it has better, you know, better pacing and whatnot, and it's just kind of overall less clunky and a little bit more, you know, polished. Not that it's perfect, though. I mean, when you're making games all by yourself and you have no budget, there's going to be a few issues here and there. Honestly, at this point, it seems like even if you do have a budget, your game's going to be really glitchy just because people don't know how to optimize things anymore. I've got to admit, though, in some cases it could also be the production company, you know, if they put games out too quickly. This is a rather well-known excuse. I'm not sure I entirely buy it. In some cases, I think the development teams are just incompetent. I know people are like, well, you don't know, you know, how hard it was working on this game. It's like, here's the thing. Occasionally, either circumstance or other factors conspire to just make a complete disaster. Occasionally, everyone involved in everything going into a project was just doomed to fail, and it was all stupid. Not a pleasant outcome, of course, but too bad, you know? Sometimes that's how life is. Sometimes the development team was at fault, sometimes the company was also at fault. I feel like game developers get a little bit too much slack. There's this whole thing about hard work. Hard work, if it's not being put into something useful, is kind of... It's not meritorious. It's not actually, like, anything you should be praising. It's like, oh, I put really hard work into making trash. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, if you look at older games, there are some games that have really good concepts, but they, you know, the hardware just wasn't up to snuff and kind of fell apart. Or you look at really appealing games where you're like, oh, this game is charming, but it doesn't quite... You know, mechanically it's a bit clunky. It's like, what they had, though, I think at the end of the day, that brings people back to some of these older games, isn't necessarily that the game was perfect, but it was just... It had this kind of magic to it, you know? There was this effort and this vision, this distinct vision that everybody likes. Like, take Medieval, for example. I would describe Medieval as a very flawed game, very flawed franchise in general, but people just like something about the skeleton man, you know, whacking enemies, and kind of stuck in people's heads, even though, you know, there's some flaws in it, some glaring issues, and, you know, some shortfalls and things that didn't quite go right. Even in the remake, surprisingly. I think they were a little too faithful in some areas, but when you look at something like that, there was just this heart and this creativity to it that even when it all kind of fell on its face, you're like, I still kind of like it. I commend what they were trying to do. Nowadays, what I see is there's this game that has a lot of budget and a lot of, like, technical effort behind it, but it has no soul. There's no, like, actual vision or anything interesting or unique about it. And if you need any better example, it's pretty trite and overplayed, but Suicide Squad versus, you know, same development team, supposedly, that worked on Arkham Asylum. And just, like, you can measure the differences in terms of, like, there's just so much more ideas in the Arkham games. even the less good ones look better in comparison to Suicide Squad. Even the ones, you know, when things were kind of, you know, when you do something too long, it starts to kind of lose its luster. But yeah, it's just a matter of creativity versus just kind of soulless production, where it's just... I also think it's probably something to do with corporations, because corporations really aren't interested in taking risks, and creative people really are. Creative people are kind of the grease that holds all industry together. You know, if you look at people who invented a lot of these inventions that we like, it started out as a risky proposition, you know, the internet and things like that. Usually it was somebody who had this idea and they were like, you know, I bet we could do this. And people were like, that's impossible. That's science fiction stuff. I'm not going to risk my money in something like that. And then they did it and became super wealthy and, you know, based off their risk. Some risks don't pay off. Sometimes you don't get anywhere. But that's just life, you know. But risk-taking is a part of good business. If you don't take risks, you won't end up anywhere. And these people who take the risks, they'll build the company up and they'll make it super, you know, important and memorable, like Walt Disney. You know, or people like that, entrepreneurial people in the true sense, who take risks and, you know, they create these wonderful things that everybody likes in the process. Sometimes they don't, you know, sometimes you maybe create a complete flop, a blunder. But then they'll create that wonderful thing, and later on, when they're dead, some soulless, you know, person who's adverse to risk will ruin it and just kind of make it a stale pile of bones that nobody wants to look at anymore. Which is fine by me. I mean, if somebody takes my creations after I'm dead, I'm past hurting, and you'll all have to suffer the consequences of what people do with my work. You know, I'm kind of one of those people who, once I'm dead, nothing else really matters to me in terms of, you know, will my estate still, you know, make money off of my properties or whatever? I don't care. You know, it doesn't really matter to me once I'm dead. I don't believe in legacy. I believe in some things, like, I don't think you should purposely set up future generations for failure. If you can avoid doing something that will hurt other people in the future, or could potentially, like, I don't know, pouring nuclear waste into a river. It's a very cartoonish example, but you don't want to risk, you know, messing things up for other people after you're dead, you know, while you're alive. But once you're actually dead, I cease to care about everything else. It's like, I don't care about my legacy. If anybody remembers me, it doesn't matter. By the way, they won't remember you most of the time. The league of people who are actually remembered after death is very, very small when you actually think about it percentage-wise. Odds are most of us will be forgotten. Which isn't a big deal. I think people find it terrifying. It's like an existential crisis. It's like, I'm forgotten. That means I just died and nobody cared. It's like, well, nobody really cared anyway. I don't think people at funerals actually care, for the most part. I think they believe they care, but I don't, you know. I think that's in their head. I think it's delusion. The amount of people who will actually care when you're dead is very small, and I'm not sure anyone should care. When you're dead, you've shuffled off. I think it's better to care about people when they're alive. Have you ever noticed how people, they'll be like all aggressive and nasty to someone, and then when they're dead, they're like, oh, well, I was pretty bad, but now that they're dead, I'm going to cry all over them. It's like, well, it's not important now that they're dead. You care more about the dead than you do about the living. Oh, that's another thing I've noticed. People will automatically change their opinion of you if you're like in a certain, situation, like you have medical complications. It's like, I hate you, and I think you're a dull idiot and a dullard. And it's like, oh, but now you have cancer, and they're like, oh, I retract everything that I said. It's like, that's not honest. It's not right. Anyway, I think we've got the crystals ready. He kind of appears to be just about done. I think we're going to have to get the back. Which we got a lot of sculpt detail to work with back here, so... Most of this won't even be visible because of the crystals, but, you know, we have to cover our bases. Alright, I think we're about ready to add the crystals. I think I'm going to add some here. Also, let's go ahead and remove the luminoise from this. And the collidability. Speaking of which, did I make all of these uncollidable? I think we're ready to go, though. Let's get the interior of this mouth. I think that would be a good place to start. Also the dark spots. That's generally something we want to wipe out early. Wonder what a jet black Space Godzilla would look like. I don't think I'm going to be the one to explore that, but it's an interesting idea. It's amazing how adding this dark stuff actually makes a pretty big difference in terms of how good he looks. It's like shading, I guess. I guess we didn't get all of that. Don't have much time, though. think I would like this to be the last part. Just because, you know, I think we've been harping on him quite a long time. Going on for quite a while on this particular character. And he's pretty much complete. I feel like the little, you know, little back details aren't gonna be a huge difference. I'll just add them in post. But yeah, those little extra details, they actually help quite a bit. At least these paint details, I should say. Nah, I think we'll skip that. But yes, I think he's pretty much... Oh, a little shade on the teeth. That's something to do. Also, the few of them have to be readjusted in their position. Let's try red, that's different. Alright. Oh, and a little red on these. And there we have it. Completed, except for these, like, you know, little back parts, but I'll just get those later. Since we're out of time and whatnot. Space Godzilla. Here are the names of all of our lovely cult supporters. Many thanks to all of you. If you'd like to get your name in those credits, check the link in the description and head over to our coffee. You can become a cultist neophyte to become credited at the end of our video, or you can become an acolyte to gain early access to videos in addition to credit. Now, if you aren't in the mood for membership, you can always leave a one-time tip. If you enjoyed this video and are not already subscribed, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. And maybe give us a quick like, both options are free. Also, don't forget to ring the notification bell so you will always be notified when new videos come out. If you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions, leave them in the comment section. Or if you just want to let out your pent-up rage, give us some smack talk. Until next time, goodbye.